one thing I've realized, and this is a revelation that came to me, having been a teacher online and doing these things, I realized that I'm curious what you think of this. This is a revelation that came to me recently, which is style is defined by all of your failures you've overcome.
I fucking love that.
I would hate to take that from somebody because I want them to fail because I found my style from failure.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in a world where everybody's sharing their secrets, I feel like sometimes it's good to hide them back. A perfect example is I do this thing with cars with my good friend Carlos, aka Color Sponge. And we have all of these assets and things and ways of processes and doing things. And I don't even think, even if we showed everybody how we did everything, I really don't think they would even do it because we have our own approach by this point and the way that we see things. But this is like this, we get a lot of requests. Can you do tutorials, this and that? And I think to myself, like, even if I did one, I don't know if it would really, like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, part of me is like, I don't know if I want to do that because I want people to fail and succeed and learn as they go. Because this is something that Carlos and I have talked about, because he's really gracious with his time and I'm always asking questions. Because that's how I am. I'm a student to life. And he'll teach me, and he's like, I've never encountered anybody that I've ever taught these things to that picked it up as fast as you. And I'm like, well, that's cool. Thanks. You know, and I'm like, thanks for keep showing. I will ask you everything. And I will absorb everything you tell me because you're a fucking master at this stuff, you know. And then vice versa. We help each other out and kind of push each other into that direction too, which is really great. But it's a good experience. But yeah, I really do feel that. And I say that as I'm looking straight at a Mike Mignola art piece of Hellboy. And the reason why I came to that revelation, because I have a Frank Miller Batman and a Mike Mignola drawing of Hellboy. And both of those guys, their style had come from failing to be the Jim Lees of the time or the whoever of the time, the Jack Kirby's, because they didn't have that style. They became their own self. And I think your style comes from all the failures you've overcome. And that's what makes you fucking cool and unique and weird. And I love that. And I think this creative space needs that, especially when we have this thing like AI just data scraping and creating like repeats of repeats, you know? It's like,
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. For me, I never wanted to share files, things like that, because I felt like then people wouldn't do the training. They would just open up the file and play around and give up. And so I use as an example just where I feel a lot of people, like, the doing and the struggle and everything else is like where they're going to get that growth, and you don't want to cheat them from that. But yeah, it's so important. I mean, if everything was easy, it wouldn't be worth doing, you know. It is the struggle of making you feel like I earned it, like I did this thing. Yeah, it's important. We've never talked about cars. Like, that's one thing, like, I've never posted anything about, but like the last couple of years, like, I was thinking about this today too, that like now I'm going down this character like kind of thing, just because up until now it's been cars for the last few years, because my wife's in the car industry, and like the more I'd look at what they're doing, I'm just like, these people, cavemen, like a lot of people I'd meet at SEMA and all these other events, like I was just always like, man, they're so behind the times. And then when Christina's business wanted to promote it, so I'm like, well, if you work on a Lamborghini and you spend 6 months like creating this wrap, and then the client doesn't even take any good photos because they're like terrible at taking photos or whatever, you can't show it off. Well, why don't we just go and film the entire thing, and I'll just put photoreal cars in and we'll show it all off there. And so it's just, for me, I started getting really into doing that, just creating these video pieces that look like they were filmed and completely photoreal, but it was just my way of kind of getting to dabble in her industry a little bit, just seeing that opportunity. But for me, just on the sidelines, it made me a lot more passionate about cars that I wouldn't have been otherwise. And obviously,
yeah,
huge history there.
Yeah, cars. Yeah. I always say it's not the car, it's the human, and it's the connection to the human. And they're like Iron Man's suit or Batman's cape or cowl. It's like an extension. It's always an extension. When it's not an extension, it's usually not a right fit, and it doesn't necessarily work. When I was designing the Batmobile, I was told a specific brief, and then I fell into the brief knowing Bruce Wayne and Batman so intimately because I grew up with those characters and like infused in my head. So I thought the outside would be Batman and the inside would be Bruce Wayne, all shelled and broken and shattered, a shattered human. So it's more subconsciously, you don't think about it when you watch the movie necessarily. But this is one thing I realized that was totally blew my mind, is in my short film I I liked a lot of details and hide all kinds of stuff in it.
Mhm.
And the level that these people really understood what the hell I was doing, I could not believe it. I was like, I thought that I was making this weird, abstract, rogue, left-wing like art film, and people are like full on linking to it. And
That's great.
not just a couple, but like,
Get it.
yeah, it was really cool. And so what I'm saying by that and connecting it to cars, I feel like it's like finding the personality within in something, and cars have a story, and it's not the car, it's the object of the soul of the person. Oftentimes there's a channel on YouTube I used to watch. I don't watch it much anymore. It's called Petrolicious, and they did a wonderful job taking you through a story of somebody's unique connection to a car, and they're all very different and stuff, but there were some really wonderful stories in there that were kind of connected to the human soul, humans, machines, all of these things, which I just love that stuff. And I try to explain that to people that don't understand that it's not just cars, it's a different thing. And yeah, and the only reason I like to do them in the computer with my buddy is because it's so fun and it's cheaper than building them for real, and it looks real. So hey, win. When
you first kind of got greenlit to design a Batmobile, like for you, like was that a dream project? Was that something that yeah, like, what was that like when that happened?
Yeah, absolutely. It was because I had worked with Rupert Sanders. Rupert Sanders was a director of mine that I'd worked with pretty closely, and he knew I loved cars. James Chinlin, the production designer that worked with Matt Reeves on the Batman, was searching for an artist, designer, conceptual artist that loved cars, and that was me. And then he had worked and hired a couple of designers, and then I had went out to him, and I went out to Warner Brothers to meet him in person, and I looked him in the eyes after he showed me the brief, and I said, I'm here in this planet, this time, this is my destiny. I'm going to design this car. And that is it. And I said, I shook on his hand, and I said, that's it. He was pumped, and I said, it's going to happen. So I love Matt's films. I think he's fantastic. I think that he takes these massive things and he's able to make them distilled and make them pleasurable and enjoyable. And I was so excited to see his take on Batman and knowing his influences. And then Greg Fraser, one of my favorite DOPs, and I was just over the moon. I knew this was all happening, and I was like, oh my God. So yeah,
That's great.
I mean, it's enormous, but at the same time, I was just, you know how it goes when you get in these jobs and you just put the suit on, you just go full on, and you're just like, I just remember just not sleeping much and just going full on. I knew the pressure, and I knew that if I didn't figure it out, somebody else right behind me was going to do it. So I needed to get it solved as fast as possible. And ultimately, as you know, it's like you need to win the client's heart and their emotions. As soon as you do that, and it was one top render looking down, and the engine was exposed, and it had this red light on it. And Matt viscerally responded to that. That's it. That's the heart of the beast. And he, because he's a storyteller, he's not a car guy. So you have to figure out a way to communicate those things and really listen. In regards to my career, it's like, how can I top that? It's like Batmobile for a car nerd that loves comics. It's like,
yeah,
that's it. And it's an easy thing to say to people too if they don't know what I do. It makes it easier. So I'm like, have you seen the Batman? And there you go. So yeah, and it was it was a big process, and I have a big thanks to James for just like really being incredible. James Chinlin was an incredible production designer and just let me go and do my thing, and was just really great at working with. And he was outstanding. No pressure from him ever. It was just like such a great guy. He was like, oh, now that you finished the Batmobile, pass it all over, and then you want to try the bikes? I'm like, yeah, give it to me. So then once you understand the rhythm and the flow, it's like the bikes came instantly. So both the drifter bike and the bat bike. But anyways, this is supposed to be about you, not the Batmobile. And I saw that you got really into AI. I have some questions about this stuff because I'm interested in it, but at the same time, I'm like, it happens and changes so fucking fast that I'm inundated, and I'm just like, I'm out. Like, I can't even bother keeping up on this. Like, McKay is like really deep into it, and he's showing me all this stuff that he's training his machines to do, and it's like amazing, and I love that he's doing it. But I don't know what it is. As I see the AI thing coming up, I keep doubling down on my own personal human side of things. I'm like, I'm gonna make this my thing. And I like doing art the way I've been doing it, which is probably going to be the death of me, which is just doing it the slow way of it coming from within me and me failing through it my own stable diffusion mind way. I'm curious what you think of it, because this is huge for the VFX world. All these tools I see them chipping away at these abrasions and frictions in the pipeline of making VFX for the general population.
You're right. AI just in the last 2-3 years, but especially in the last
6 months.
Yeah, it's been revolutionary. And the thing is, I think the way I kind of got sucked into it a little bit was that I knew a little bit. I think deepfakes had become a thing, but that was like really the only thing on anyone's radar. And then I got asked to explain how AI works, what GANs are, and like all these other terms at a presentation where it was going to be me, and it was going to be someone else who was really intelligent, and then Google and NVIDIA. And so when I was on the panel, like when we were in the green room, I was like, hey, I just want to introduce myself as the dumbest person in the room. Because like when I was approached to do it,
there you go again, self-deprecating.
In this case, I feel like it was very applicable, but it was one of those things that I actually had turned down, like, because I said like, look, I'm not the guy, like I don't know any of this shit. And the person who would approach me was like, no, like you're the only person I've ever met who actually explained what AI is in a way that actually makes sense for the layman. And like, we want you to do all this.
What did you tell that person? How did you explain AI?
It wasn't I had done a YouTube video somewhere about like AI, but it was more kind of like the fuzzy kind of future of like, hey, it's not going to take out jobs, it's going to be a tool. Because there's more me looking historically at like all the big fear factors that everyone's like, oh, computers are gonna take away artist jobs or whatever.
Yeah.
And
I agree with you on this too, by the way. I'm really hoping it becomes more like the movie Her, if anything. That's what my hope is, and I think it's going to go that way. I hope so.
He had tracked me down because of a video I'd put out on YouTube, but then said like, I want you to explain all this, but it kind of forced me to have to go and learn all this, and then try to like regurgitate it in a way that made sense to everyone else. And that I think kind of got me hooked, because I started to understand it a lot more. But the thing is that because I've always dabbled with programming, I don't consider myself a programmer, but I've always been able to do that. And so I've kind of gotten into it, and I got more and more into all the stuff. And I think in a lot of ways, like I didn't really care about Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, and I think it's really fascinating, but to me it takes the fun out of art. So it just never appealed to me. But there's other things that did. And it was really interesting when ChatGPT came around, because I've been following GPT from like before it ever came out, when it was first created, and OpenAI were like procrastinating about whether or not they want to release it, because they felt like the amount of fake news and just misinformation, like it could change everything. But then money, so they did. And
then money.
But I've been very familiar with GPT, and so it was just one of those things that when ChatGPT came out, like no one had really caught on yet, and I was a very early adopter, and it's probably the only time I've ever kind of felt really weird by just starting to get into it, and I'm just seeing the potential. And I remember saying to someone, like, there's this thing that came out a couple of days ago, and I think it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Even then, like, learning how to...
Can you understand it, like how it works? Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, I feel...
In theory?
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, like ChatGPT, it's just a chatbot. It's given a very big language model to sit on.
Data set, yeah.
Coincidentally, GPT-4 came out today, which will date the episode, but it came out today, and it's so much bigger. So I mean, I just before this call, I was like, what's some questions Ash Thorp should ask Allan McKay? And it just it's just really interesting, because right away I was just like, well, Ash believes this is in.
I haven't even used it yet, so I have no idea. Yeah, I can't.
I thought it was hilarious that it actually knows who you and I are enough that, like, I even said to it was just a philosophical thing, because I thought, well, GPT-4, let's see. And I said, like, what should Allan McKay do with his career? And I haven't read through it all yet, but I was just like, fuck, like, yeah, that's exactly what I should be doing with my life.
There it is, right there. That is a beautiful thing where... And you know what I thought when I used Stable Diffusion a little bit, but I used Midjourney because a barrier of entry was so easy and convenient. The thing that I realized that I thought was most phenomenal in my revelation was, oh wow, we're really quite simple. We are very simple creatures on the level of that. And then I realized, oh, making pretty pictures is no longer the task. Like, it's been sorted now. And now it's a matter of intent. And that's interesting. Because I feel like you and I can both relate to this, and probably most people listening to this, is that as kids, we got into art because we had imaginations and curiosities. by no means were we thinking about EXR sequences and ID mat. No way. We never cared about that shit. Why? Because that is not the art. The art is the imagination, the curiosity side of things. So it's interesting to see like this, if this could be a barrier where it's like you could be a child right now. By the time you are able to develop yourself into a place where you can fulfill some sort of purpose in this world, and you might be able to jump over this big hole that we've been dug into by this weird process of coming up with visuals to work, which is, I don't like it. I've never liked it. I had a lot of friends in my career that were digital artists and stuff that just suffered because they hated it. But I've overcome it because my curiosity supersedes my impatience with these things. And I'm just like, well, fuck it. If nobody's going to do it, I have to do it. And then I just, then all of a sudden I'm in a Rococo suit and I'm dancing around doing stuff, like.
Ash, like this is so weird. I literally was just thinking about motion capture, and I was going to share with you that this is the thing I'm excited about. It's not AI, it's motion capture right now, and it's fucking hilarious that you then mentioned Rococo suit.
Did you see the program that are doing those things? So I'm actually partnering with Rococo because they've reached out to them, and I was like, let me be an evangelist for your software and your hardware. I think it's really rad, but at the same time, like, I'm learning the workflow with that, and everything, as you know, is a engineered pipeline. So I'm like, now I gotta learn Maya. I'm like, yeah. Or Blender. And I've been, again, I don't know what my problem is. I should stop resisting these things and just fall into it. But I just know that once I open up these things, there goes months of my life. And
that is what I'm going through right now. Yeah. And it's exciting. Like, it's all I've been thinking about, and I'm getting shitty sleep because like I end up just writing notes, like pages of notes of like, I want to do all this stuff. And coincidentally, there's an Amazon show that Amazon was just like, here's a lot of money. And I told them, like, I know people who can cast and film like all these people. We don't need to go on a computer and do it all. Like, we could do it all for like a tenth the cost. They're like, no, like, we want to do it with crowd simulations and motion capture. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go and spend a lot of your money on this thing that we don't. Okay, great. So I started looking at motion capture suits and doing all these calls with all these companies, and then selfishly using the podcast, I was just like, all right, like, I'm gonna get all these people on, and I'm going to talk to them about it and quickly get up to speed. So there's this
very
AI
smart.
one that came out, and like the more I talk to them, Move is the company.
Move.io, right?
Move.ai.
AI, sorry, Move.ai.
And I'm trying to train myself not to say Move AI because I think the company's Move, and I think everyone says Move AI, so I'm like trying to say Move. But yeah, so I had Anthony, the CEO, on the podcast, and I ended up picking his brain a lot, and he's been sending me videos of like, hey, we just did this thing, like 3 people in a volume, no suits, finger tracking, everything.
Impressive.
Fuck. So I
it's
ended
3
up
phones, right? It's 3 phones that triangulate. And then,
so I'm using 6, which is the most you can use, but 2, 3 is a good starting point. So like, it was really cool. Like, they're like, hey, we'll send you phones and everything else. What do you need? And I was like, no, just give me a shopping list. I'm gonna go do this. And I was talking with Xsense last week, and we're specking like 35 grand of suits, and suddenly it's like $400 a year from Move. And I went and bought 6 refurbished iPhone 11s, which are like wide. They're the cheapest of the wide lens ones, which are good. And I've been getting like all this stuff going, and they're getting to a point where they can compete with optical, not even inertia-based suits, like optical suits. This just kind of opened up this whole thing for me where I'm like, there's all these things I want to do. And so I just spent like 2 more grand today buying like all this software. I got a character creator and iClone, which I would have never used otherwise, but I'm like, I want to go and make these characters and be able to like rig them up, and then just because I want to be able to act out the motion over here. And so there's always,
what do these programs do? These ones take a character that you sculpted and auto rig them so that it's like it's not all nasty and stuff?
Yeah, so one will do auto rigging really well, and the other one, well,
T-pose, A-pose?
Yeah, T-pose, A-pose, or there's one more because I was watching all the demo stuff earlier, but it just opened up all these doors. And like, character creator actually allows you to build characters without sculpting.
Metahuman?
Like metahuman, yeah. It's very similar to that in a lot of ways. And it just seemed like that'd be a great way where I'd be able to like throw together, some characters without needing to go and sculpt them all. And I was thinking about this on the way home today, that I could do all those things if I wanted to. I don't have the patience, and I'm looking. What I get excited about is how I can create shortcuts to get away from the things. That's why AI to me actually became interesting. Yeah, I could go do all these things that take up all my time, or I could build these systems to give me more time. And it's always been, how do I?
It's gonna go so fast too. The technology's moving so rapid. Seems too. We're in this boom. I mean, we're old enough to have been through a couple booms. You know, like I'd say, like, I don't know. I'm just coming up with some random thing, but like when the NES came out and PlayStation, shit like that, I was like, whoa. You know, now we can all play, whoa, these graphics and the bit rate and all these kind of things. And then the birth of the modem and the house computer and stuff like that. Yeah, I feel like this is the same kind of big boom that's happening. And I'm always wondering, like, because I put the suit on, I'm like, yeah, I've heard about that move thing too. And I was like, I could just do the thing. But the biggest problem, as I noticed, because I'm working on a project called Orion, I did like 150 of these paintings. I did this whole sequential thing. And I'm working with my friend's studio called Hydra. But anyways, I'm learning through the whole process, just like with Chimera, like where the pitfalls are, where all the struggles are. And that is one of the hardest things, is character animation, the rigging side of it, and then the animation and getting all these things, and, you know, working remotely and stuff. It's been really interesting. And you can have the most amazing animator, but if you can't get in their brain in regards to taste, it's like, wow. And you're sitting there doing so much work to try and finagle it to the direction you need. It's a very difficult task. Yeah.
Well, I love that idea too, just being able to act it out yourself. Because I've got like a slew of animators at my disposal if I wanted to use them, but I'm directing animators all day long, and I don't want. To me, I want to go home and do it myself. You know, it is one of those things that, like, now these tools are coming out where it's like, if you like animating, or if you like sculpting, you can do that, or you can kind of work around that. And to me, like, I feel like there's always been stuff with characters that, because like environments, things like that, I've got all this expensive gear to scan and capture environments, and so I can go out a location, I can pretty much take that location back with me, and that's how I've always worked on set. But the character part has always been this whole disconnect, and I love the idea now. Like, that's where suddenly, it sounds cheesy, but like, I was always addicted to Mortal Kombat growing up, you know, as a kid.
Cheesy. That was an addicting game.
Well, it's cheesy because now I'm like, well, I can go and do like really gory fatalities and just have fun, like doing some like really fun kind of character sequences with just stuff that I think is like a one-off, like 15-second or 30-second piece. I could have carte blanche. I can do whatever I want. And so there's all these like ideas right now that I'm like, I can actually execute on these, whereas 6 months ago I couldn't. It would require me asking favors and, you know, all the other stuff. So
yeah, it's less friction. I feel like the future, hopefully, if it's going right, it's going to be less friction. That's one thing I realized. I was starting to use it and I was like, wait, this is creating more holes and more valleys and more friction, and I'm not trying to go backwards, I'm trying to go forward. So yeah, that's always the trick, is just finding ways to move and navigate through it. But then being clear in your objective is really the key thing too, I found. Because with technology, as we see, like, it's so alluring, especially this AI stuff, because it's so flashy. And if you're really not conscientious of what you're doing, you're just going to be like falling down the rabbit hole. So, because I remember spending like hours on Midjourney, just like addicted to, like, whoa, cool, what about this, and what about that, and what about this? And it's like sitting right next to a really great artist that's just pumping out all kinds of crazy stuff, and you're like, oh, I didn't even think about that, that's weird. And for me, at least, it opened up this whole window, but it also closed out another thing. And then I realized at the end of it, I was like, well, that's cool, I'm just gonna still paint. Or I'll generate some interesting things and then I'll just smash it all together and use it like photo bashing almost, you know. We are truly in a cool time. I love that it's opening up this portal of passion for you, and that you're going back to your childhood. I always go back to my childhood whenever I'm like scratching that itch. I always go backwards, and I go right back to that kid who was just escaping reality and wanted to use. That's when your purest state is, you know, and you're just curious and wanting to know more, and you don't care about all these other things. And yeah, when you fulfill those, you're just like, yeah, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
it's exciting, man. I'm excited to see where this all goes. You know, there's always the fear, like, there's so many people who fear AI and all this other stuff. And, you know, I think if anything, like, I'll say this sounds, maybe I'll stop saying everything sounds cheesy, but like, I've always done tutorials and stuff like that. I've always liked sharing, because when I was 16, 17, I was just obsessed with trying to figure out stuff that, especially back then, like no one had really figured out. And I'd want to let everyone else have the shortcut of like, hey, I did this thing, here's how I did it. Part of it was also that if I share all my stuff, then I can't rely on it. I can't be like, I know this one secret and I get all the jobs because I can do this one thing. It's like, if I put it all out there, it's going to force me to continue to evolve. Otherwise, I become that one-trick pony. Like I know so many people I've worked with in the past who like, they're good at their one little thing, instead of being like, no, like put it all out there, and it means that you've got nothing. So you're going to constantly need to better yourself. Otherwise, you will go stale. And
Yeah.
I kind of enjoyed that.
If I stripped away, say, your job and your husband duties and your friends and all these kind of things, what's your day look like? If I were to say all of these things are sitting in the background, what are you doing today?
I don't practice this, but I think it would be being around other people. To me, it's creating. It's all the creative things that I do. I do what I want to do. Like I'm fortunate in that way. Like there's not a part of my life that I'm doing that I'm like, I hate doing this, or I shouldn't be doing this. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. And I'm fortunate enough to kind of be in that situation. But if I wasn't
manifested though, right? It's been pretty
absolutely
manifested. Yeah. Hard work and
there's definitely, I've put in the time up front to get to that point. But if I wasn't doing any of that, I think it would be spending time with other people. Is definitely like, for me, I love catching up with people. This is something I'm definitely going to cherish. That to me is the kind of like what I like to do in my spare time, is either some alone time to think, because I feel like I don't, there's so much noise out there, but otherwise it's being around people and getting just to appreciate new experiences.
I think it's both. I think I call it the bringer of love, life and death, really. I think of it as that it's killing off a lot of things that we don't need, and some things we probably do need, and then it's giving birth to another thing. And I think it's getting us, in my mind, it's getting us to ask the real true questions about, why am I doing the things I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
What is my self-worth in this world?
Yeah.
How do I find that? That's a beautiful thing, if you think about it.
If anyone can do now what you do and what you're good at doing, then why do you do it? Do you still need to do it, or are you doing it because you enjoy it?
Yes. Yeah. If you're doing it for likes and followers and all these like sad things that you've fallen down into this well of like vapid self fascination, then you realize quickly like, oh shit, this is a false fuel, and now I'm stuck in outer space. I need gravity to pull me back down, and that gravity should be your calling. As you've said, you're falling back in. Like I've gotten obsessed with the game Doom, and I just like watch people play it, and like I watch all the John Romero interviews, and like and I'm just like, what the, like Lex Friedman did one with what's his name?
John Carmack.
Like, yes, yeah.
I watched it twice. If you look in the comments, I said there needs to be another 7 hours. So
the longest interview of all time. Yeah.
It's funny that you say all this, because I wanted to bring up Lex Friedman because I was curious to see I adore the guy. And then on top of that, like we're talking about Mortal Kombat, like me running the podcast, like that allowed me to meet some of my childhood heroes. So like Jordan Mechner is now a friend of mine who created Prince of Persia. And then Command and Conquer was another big one. It had a big influence on me as a kid. And so I've had Lewis Castle on twice, who was the founder of Westwood Studios. Coincidentally, with Doom, it's so funny. I actually have like, my wife keeps buying me Doom stuff to the point where I'm actually friends with all the guys at id. And I'm like, if they ever saw this, like my other room, my other office, it's like just old Doom shit, and I'm like, they're gonna think I'm a fucking weirdo. I have a BJ Blazkowicz a mug with a pixelated face from Wolfenstein downstairs that
I love that.
For me, like the way I got into art was that like art was comics, and I loved art growing up, but then on the computer it wasn't a movie, it was actually Wolfenstein and Doom that I was just so obsessed with, and I still am, where I keep watching the GDC post-mortem from like 2013 or something of Doom with Tom Hall and John Romero. And John Romero was going to come on the podcast at one point, and
what happened?
He just disappeared. He wrote me an email, and he said something like, it's amazing what you're doing and keep it up, or something like that, or whatever. And I was just like, you even know who I am? Like, what the fuck? Like John Carmack and I were on stage together arguing about Burnout in Dallas, Texas, at the Industry Giants event in 2012, and it was just one of these things where I felt like saying to him, like, you're way smarter than I am, but you're wrong, because he's basically like, you just need to get more sleep, and that's how you avoid burnout. And I'm like, no, like it's find something passionate to escape from all the.
He addressed that in his talk with Lex too. I thought was interesting.
Yeah,
he said it in a certain way I thought was interesting.
All of those guys, coincidentally, I've met most of them over the years, and
that's cool.
Which is just been really cool. And then I'm a good friend.
That game is still relevantly amazing.
It is.
Doom, the first one.
I played the E1M1 music on YouTube the other day, and I said, "What's this?" to Christina, and she's like pondering for a really long time. And I thought just by default she would have said Doom, but she didn't. And I'm like, "It's Doom," and she's like,
that one, yeah, which is like they're all like riffs of like Pantera or Metallica.
Yeah, a lot of them are. They're like blatant ripoffs, especially in Doom 2. Even with the more recent one, like when Doom 2016 came out, I was down.
I've never played any of them except 1 and 2.
It's fun, but like Doom 1, you know, it's just that changed my world. But it's just funny. I'm friends with Hugo Martin, and I had him on the podcast, but then we couldn't get clearance for the episode with ZeniMax. But when
wonderful
Doom 2016 came out, I was down there celebrating the release with them.
Nice.
And, so it was really fun. We actually ended up.
He's the one that's carrying the torch, right? He's carrying the torch for the new ones. Yeah.
Yep. I just thought of this now. We ended up this like really grotesque strip club in the middle of the night, and it was fucking atrocious. Like, I was texting Christina the entire time, just like, I am bored, and you know, but it was Pantera's strip club. They owned it, which is,
well, of course it's gonna be gross now. It's gotta be. It's a.
So I haven't really connected the dots to it right now, but yeah, Pantera owned a strip club in Dallas, and that's where we ended up, and yeah, it was
makes sense.
Miserable.
Yeah, all those guys are so interesting, especially the original ones. And I have this theory. I'm curious what you think of it. So all of a sudden, I started getting obsessed with Doom again. And I was like, why am I freaking getting into Doom now? Like, and I think it's because I was like, I go from one nostalgia thing to the other. I was like Ghost in the Shell, and then Akira, then Star Wars, and I go to Doom. And these are all these pinnacle moments, you know, these things that I've encountered through my youth. And then I was looking at like videos of people playing The Last of Us, and it's like this fully realized, beautiful world. And I was thinking, I really think that Doom is still as impactful as it is in my opinions, because it takes you like 70% there in the visuals, and you have to use your imagination and fill in the blank because it's so pixelated, and you just get used to that high power like that. And the game mechanism is so brilliant, like it's so ahead of its time, that I think it just is just like, what the fuck is this? Guys, I remember the first time I encountered it, I was like, this is dimensional space inside of a computer. Like, this is the first time because before that was like Oregon Trail and shit. It's like, you know, you know, like,
right.
You know, like this was violent and in your face, and it was just like unapologetic and cheeky and weird. And but I think like the graphic nature of it, like the sound of the imps, you know, like, you know, like those sounds, and like all of these sounds, like just like, dude, like the best. And they're still like, to this day, they have that primal thing. And even I don't play the new games, the guy that did the score for the other ones, I like heavy music too.
Yeah.
Mitch is his name, I think.
Mick Gordon. Bobby
Mick Gordon,
yeah. Did the original composing of the original Doom, and then Mick Gordon did the new one.
Yeah. There was all kinds of controversy around that, as I understand, but anyways, that stuff rips too. And I love like heavy music, so I was like, oh, it's a sick riff, and the way he breaks it down, and listening to all the layers of the sounds that he did with it and stuff. But
he's an Aussie as well.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Last question I have for you.
Yeah, bring it.
What is the thing that comes to mind that you're the most thankful for at this moment in your life?
I'd say my wife. Just having a great partner. No bullshit, no toxicity. Just being able to, you know, have someone who supports me, and vice versa. So yeah, I think I'm extremely grateful for that.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, you know, not to just be lazy with the same answer, but I'd say the same thing. I've been married to my wife for 15 years now, and yeah, I just love her. I just love her so much, and I'm so thankful to grow with her, and we're quite opposite, so our relationship takes energy and takes, you know, effort continually. We call it, you know, when they send off a nuke, they have to have two keys turn at the same time. So we get up every day, you turn the key. So yeah, you know, and her putting me in check, and also just being a good partner, it's been really great. I confide in her a lot. She helps me evolve, and vice versa. She requires a lot of me, and I give her a lot too. So
I
yeah,
remember
I'd say
telling me
my wife.
that she would get annoyed sometimes when you're like, oh, I gotta go work. All this client work I gotta get done, and it turns out you're just in your office doing personal work and doing your thing. You know? But yeah, I
Well,
mean,
that's how she would leave me alone. So
but
yeah. Well, she's my producer now. I don't know if she was my producer back then. I think she was, but now she's intrinsically connected. She knows why I'm upset, and she also knows she can't control my behaviors either. And she knows if she tries to, it just creates more friction. So she's like, "Fuck," and then she'll be there to say, "I told you so." And I know.
that's
And
good when
then,
you got someone who understands you. You know. So,
well, yeah. If you don't have that, I mean, I couldn't spend 15 years with her. If she, I mean, we're always learning about one another, but I think that the general idea of who we are and who we becoming and who we're growing into, because like our daughter is almost 18, so we're going to be empty nesters here, and that's a whole nother like that's a whole nother life, especially because my wife is such a good mom. A part of her identity is going to shift, you know. So it's almost like if my art left the house, you know, like what the hell, you know, like what am I
yeah.
going to do? So we have to create some good practices to create strong mental health and strong, you know, bond, so that we can cope and also adjust and enjoy this next section of our lives, which is, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, my daughter's gonna go up to college. It's wild. So I'm excited to see who she becomes. That's like the thing I'm most excited about with her. But yeah, to answer your question in the longest form possible, I'd say my wife, because yeah, she's just a great person and really love her. She's a great, good human being. Stoked to spend my life with her.
I mean, it'd be sad if you're like my car. You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's a lot of things I'm thankful for, but yeah. I mean, there's you know, it could be that. It could be like, or my health. You know, health is always really high up there. Yeah, because I was
Yeah.
sick recently. I was like, oh my god, it's the worst thing.
I'll say this, and I've said it before, but like, yeah, when Brannick told you that, yeah, like my face was paralyzed and I was going through hell, like, you know, you're one of the very few people who would, yeah, actually check in from time to time, and I
So
appreciate that.
gnarly, dude. Yeah, of course. I mean, why wouldn't I?
But I
It's a
understand
big
that
deal.
most people get so caught up in their own shit. It's going through
So
all
easy to
that
send a
filtration.
message, dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it's like the easiest thing. I mean, that I feel cheap just by that and how long it's I feel shitty for like how long it and how hard it is, because we both had times where I was supposed to be available for the call, and then some weird shit would happen with family or something. And I'm like, I can't do it. So yeah, but of course, I mean, that's a scary thing. When John told me, I was like, oh shit, instantly, like, are you okay? Like, the fuck's going on? You know? So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah, I won't lie, it was scary, and I'm still dealing with it. But like, it's now like I get weird twitches where I have to like tell people like I'm not snarling at you, just like the freaking nose keeps like the nose keep misfiring
you need to
shit.
get a tattoo there. It says like, I'm not mad. I'm just got this palsy shit going on.
That's right. I think that's the thing is like, you know, being grateful for your health, because that's just it. Like it's yeah, no matter where you're at, like if you're alive, like we all take it for granted. But I definitely don't complain about many things these days, because I'm extremely grateful that I have what I have. And yeah, and again, not to be soppy, but I'm grateful for our friendship and time when we do get to catch up, being both really busy.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. I'm stoked to be able to celebrate that. And yeah, I'm glad maybe that was a good kind of pump the brakes thing. If you're a codependent and a people pleaser and all these things, and you have a vampire in your life as an ultra Dracula, then like you're gonna get some health problems. And I was,
Yep.
no, I didn't go as far as you, but there was my wife basically said, that's enough. You're pumping the brakes and you need to exit this situation, because I haven't seen you happy in 3 months, and this is unlike you, and I don't have the tolerance for this. And I go, oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So thankfully she saved me from going into because yeah, you lose yourself, and those people, those vampires will get you to lose who you are, your identity and your self-worth, because you'll just give them everything, you know? And
Yeah, I mean, not. I know we're doing a podcast, so it's easy to like. I shouldn't be oversharing, but like, that was a huge indicator for me. It was like Christina was crying her eyes out, saying like, "I've never seen you so unhappy," and I'm thinking like, "What do you mean? I'm unhappy all the time." Like, but I was going through something that I'd never she'd never witnessed before, and she's seen me go through like every kind of stressful situation, but like that job, just the combination of my health and just everything else, like it was so clear at that point, like there's more to life than this shit, and it just made it very easy for me. I will say, like I had a manager under me that I had hired, and he left with me. He went back to Nike, and so yeah, I just remember at the time, like I wanted to quit, and it was something where I'm like, I don't want to give 2 weeks notice, and he's like, you don't have to, like there's no laws about that, and like I'll take care of it all, just you leave and I'll roll us out. And yeah, so
that must have felt
cool.
great. You must have been able to go like breathe again.
Yeah, just kind of having someone, like one person have my back when I've got like this really toxic just CEO.
2 people, your wife and this guy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, again, like you got to be grateful for the people around you, because they're the ones.
Take note of those lessons though. You got to understand, what did I do to allow myself into that hole? Yeah, because it's they're all over the place. You got to be careful. And like I said, I think the most evil people don't realize that they're evil. And those are the most dangerous fuckers out there.
Yep.
Yeah. You gotta take stock in those guys.
Tell you some stories, but yeah, I completely agree. This has been great, and lately I've actually been there's been a few times in the last few weeks where I've like been staying up late and just doing stuff I'm passionate about. I'm like, this is really great. Like nighttime opposed to I got to wrap this up because I got to pivot to the next thing, which is mornings are always like.
I try to treat my whole year like where I spend 6 to 8 months just doing that, what you just said. And the rest I try to do client work is whenever I can, super intense, and get it out of the way. And then I can just, I'd rather have mediocre money and have that life. And that's what I'm actually trying to make better money, but doing different things, so.
When I was maybe 28, I kind of looked at kind of the structure of how I usually treat it every year. And so it's kind of like I'd already been doing it, but I kind of just defined it. But it was like 363, which was 6 months of the year you would be doing client work. It's like the stuff to pay the bills and help your career and everything else. And then 3 months of the year, vacation time, and 3 months of the year doing stuff that's personal that is actually going to help you grow. And it doesn't mean that you're doing it in these pockets. It means that distributed throughout the year, like maybe I'm going to take, and 3 months is excessive for most people, but for me it would be like 3 months of the year, over the year I'd be taking time off here and there. The main thing is that all of that would be saving the money to finance the 3 months where I actually get to have that big growth spurt, where I actually get to do something that is for me, that I would otherwise tell myself like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it. Oh, I don't have time. Or, oh, this thing came up. Instead, it's like, no, I'm making time for it. And it might be 2 weeks, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to do it here. And then a month over here, it's over a year. But like, that was always my thing, is 363 is kind of like a good balance of like making time for the things that matter in the long run and not having time to reflect, but also doing, 6 months of the bullshit that you got to do to, pay the bills and get ahead.
Yeah, I love that. It's a good ratio too. Yeah, you do it like it's a good way to look at it. Yeah, and also just picking the jobs that you feel like you can accomplish and are fulfilling enough. Yeah, that's the tricky one too. Yeah, you never know. I'll tell you some other time, but I found some fun mechanisms that can be in play to kind of safe buffer yourself from things so you don't fall into like the demise.
We'll have to compare notes sometime.
Thank you for allowing me to interview you and also blab about my life and hear and be a part of your awesome podcast. So I appreciate you taking the time to set this up, because it's not easy. I'm sure everybody that's listening, it's quite hard, and him wrangling me into this was not easy. So thank you.
Well, everyone has to check out your podcast as well. So I'll make sure to link to all that.
Nah, it's okay. It's just
maybe another 400 episodes. We can do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and send my best to your wife, and keep your health, and hopefully you get a little bit of sleep.
I will, for sure. It's important.
Yeah, somewhat.